Twinge of fear and tears that glisten. There are spoilers here for those who listen. Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. 'Tis I, Penny Dreadful, and I have manifested here with great excitement because I am joined today by producer, writer, and director Scott Young. Over the years, Scott has worked for several of the major studios and production companies. He discovered Dark Shadows one day after school in 1967 and never missed an episode after that. Scott attended the first ShadowCon, organized by Gene Graham, aka Gene Peacock. He worked for ShadowCon as a volunteer, and later he assisted Jim Pearson on the creation of original music from Dark Shadows Volume 2. In the mid to late 80s, Scott undertook the task of developing a proposal to attempt to secure the rights from Dan Curtis to make a TV reunion movie based on Dark Shadows. The effort involved many of the original cast and crew from the original series, but ultimately it was a wasted effort. He dusted that proposal off again in 2014, 2015, and made a new attempt to launch a new Dark Shadows series, but that effort was equally unsuccessful, mainly due to the failure of the 2012 Tim Burton Dark Shadows movie. In 2020, during the COVID-19 quarantines, Young created and co-produced the popular Gothic audio soap opera Secrets of Harridge House, which he openly admits is an homage to Dark Shadows. He continues to write and produce audio dramas. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hi, Penny. How are you?
I'm great. It's nice to finally meet you in person. I have known of you for many years because, as we were talking about before we started recording, I remember reading in Edward Gross's Dark Shadows files, and I recently had Ed on the podcast, 2 interviews with you from back in the 80s about Return to Collinwood, and I was really intrigued by this reunion movie TV, because back then there were all these TV movies. So we're going to get to that in a little bit because I want to hear all about that and then Darker Shadows as well. But before we talk about all of that, I want to hear about your background with Dark Shadows, because you said you discovered Dark Shadows in 1967, never missed an episode, and then got involved with ShadowCon, which is really cool. In 1977, the original Dark Shadows convention, before the Dark Shadows festivals, there was ShadowCon. So let's talk about your origins with Dark Shadows.
Well, in 1967, just one random afternoon, I came home from school. I was in elementary school then. I was only 7 years old. I tuned in and found an episode of Dark Shadows, and it was somewhere in between the introduction of Barnabas and the beginning of 1795. I couldn't tell you exactly which episode it was now because it was so long ago, but I remember sitting there and just watching this show and just going, wow, this is really cool. And came to find out that it was on every day after school. And from that point on, I was just hooked. So from then on, I never missed an episode.
Great.
So I became I was one of those kids that ran home from school every day, of course, like so many.
In California, you grew up, right?
Yes, in Southeast San Diego. My elementary school was just up the street and around the corner. So I walked to school, walked home.
What time did it air there in San Diego?
In San Diego on Channel 6, it aired at 3:30.
3:30.
I know for most people it aired at 4 o'clock. I don't know why we got it a half an hour early, but we had it at 3:30, which school let out way before that. So I was home in plenty of time. I didn't have to run home.
Yeah. You
I got,
sauntered home.
yeah, I got home, had plenty of time to, fix a snack and, take care of whatever I needed to take care of and things like that, and still had time to, sit down and watch the show. I had a deal with my parents. Homework came first. At least that was supposedly the deal. But as long as my grades were good, I could watch Dark Shadows first, and then I could do my homework afterwards. So I kept my grades up. I was always a good student. So I kept my grades up, so I had no problems with watching Dark Shadows first, and then as soon as it was over, then I'd hit the books and do my homework. And
Yeah.
by dinner time I was done with my homework, and then after dinner I could go play with my friends. So,
That's really cool. Somebody just recently commented on my YouTube comments on the podcast about, and this was the case for me as well with the syndicated broadcast I was watching on Channel 58, which it did air at 4 o'clock Monday through Friday, and there was that sort of anticipation and suspense that you had to wait until the next day to watch the next episode. Unlike now, where it's like, I mean, there are pros and cons to it. Now you can binge it and watch streaming and watch as many episodes
mhm,
as you want. But back
mhm.
then, you had to wait with on the edge of your seat, just counting down the minutes until Dark Shadows came on TV so
Oh,
that you could find out what happened next and just
oh
kind of,
yeah.
yeah, that was exciting it was an event for
And
that.
then the waiting from Friday to Monday
Oh, yeah. It was brutal.
was that was even more brutal,
Yeah.
especially because then it was like after Friday's episode, then you had all weekend, then I had all day at school
Yep.
on
Yep.
Monday, and then had to, wait until it came on Monday afternoon to see what happened next.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, that was very brutal. Um, but it was all part of the mystique of the show. It was just all
Absolutely. Yeah.
it was all
Mystique is the
part
key. Mhm.
mystique. It was all part of the experience.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. And mystique is the key word there because Dark Shadows definitely it has a mystique to it. There's that
and
eerie, dreamlike, weird quality to it. Yeah.
and then eventually, it's like the my friends that lived in the neighborhood, um, we ended up gathering at my house.
Uh-huh.
So there were, five or six of us that were at my house watching the show every afternoon, um,
That's cool.
all the way up until the end.
Yeah.
Now we had an interesting thing happening. There were some markets when the show ended in 1971. There were some markets that did not get the final week. The last five
Oh
episodes
no.
didn't air. Something else aired in place of them, and San Diego was one of them.
Oh no.
Yes,
I'm so
but
sorry.
because of our location, um, and weather conditions, and depending on what time of year it was, we had this 40-foot antenna on our roof.
Uh-huh.
This was before cable and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had this giant 40-foot antenna that had a rotor on it, so the antenna would turn,
Sure. Yeah. I remember the dial. You would
the big dial and
yeah,
all that,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And the thing would,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. On occasion, we could pick up Channel 3 in Santa Barbara, which was extraordinary because Santa Barbara was way up the coast. It was way past LA.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that was the ABC affiliate in Santa Barbara.
Mhm.
And that week, for whatever reason, the weather conditions, the atmosphere, everything, I got to see the last five episodes.
Oh, great. Oh, what a stroke of luck. The
Yes.
curse of the Collins family was lifted that week.
And Jeannie, my friend Jeannie Graham,
Yeah.
Jeannie Peacock at the time, it was before she got married. I was into electronics. So we had the system where I had wires connected to the speaker of the television
Hmm.
that were then connected to the microphone of the telephone.
Okay.
So I could dial her number and feed the audio from the TV over the phone line to her phone. And then from her speaker on her phone, she'd feed it into a tape recorder.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yep.
So she was able to record those 5 episodes.
That's great. Yeah. So
So
you,
she
mhm.
so she could at least hear the audio.
Yeah.
And then all my friends that congregated at the house, they got to see the 5 episodes, the final five
Yeah.
episodes. But most of San Diego did not get to see the final 5 episodes.
Yeah. Wow, that's definitely some ingenuity at play. That's you put in the effort to get to see those episodes. So that's great. And you
Mhm.
helped Jean out too. So I didn't realize you knew Jean even before the ShadowCon. So you were
Mhm.
friends with Jean even prior to that then.
Right. In 1972, Jeannie formed an organization in San Diego called Star San Diego. Star
Mhm.
stood for Star Trek Association for Revival, and it is the longest running Star Trek fan club in existence, still in existence now.
Great.
Uh, we meet
Wow.
we meet monthly on Zoom. We used to meet monthly in person, but everybody is now scattered around the country.
Right.
Um, like I'm in Arizona now, and we have one of our members is in Pennsylvania. So it's like everybody is scattered now. So we meet by Zoom. But I knew Jeannie from 1972 forward. And as soon as I met her, we found out that we were Dark Shadows fans. Well, we knew each other before Star. Um, anyway, that's how I became associated with ShadowCon
Okay.
because she got through her, I started going to San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep.
So I'm like an original San Diego Comic-Con attendee,
That's cool. Wow. That's
and
great.
the
Before it
orig
became like a massive pop culture movie kind of
oh yeah,
focus thing. Yeah.
back when it was a real convention,
Right.
not the hype that it is now, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then it used to go to Equicon,
Hmm.
Star Trek conventions. Um, just last week when we had our star meeting last week, people were talking about going to Worldcon, which is
Yeah.
coming up.
Hmm.
So, the
Yeah.
conventions are still out there and people are still going to them.
That's great. What about the movies? Did you go see House and Night of Dark Shadows when those came out as
Oh,
well?
absolutely. As
Yeah.
soon as I found out House of Dark Shadows was coming out, it was like when the first trailer appeared on TV, when I found out the dates, I was pestering my mom. It was like, as soon as it opens, you got to take me to the theater. You got to take me to the theater. You got to drop me off there. So, I mean, I was like front of the line
Great. Oh, cool.
the day it opened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go see Night as well?
Yeah, and I didn't care for it as much. Yeah,
That's
I think that's true with everybody. Um, I still enjoyed it,
yeah.
but I think House of Dark Shadows is one of those films I've seen. Oh, I've probably seen House of Dark Shadows upwards of 50 times.
Uh-huh.
That and Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, I love Phantom of the Paradise, sure.
Yes.
Night of Dark Shadows, I really think it hopefully we will see the director's cut in our lifetimes. There was
Darren
movement on it, and hopefully that will
Darren
continue to be
Gross's
the
effort.
case.
Yes.
Yes, yes, Darren, yeah, I would definitely Lynn Ansell, and I would love to see that an official release for that, and that really needs to happen. I'd also less likely to happen. I would love to see episode 1219, the last episode that we do have the audio for from Josette Kernigan.
Hmm.
I'd love to see that found the video for that. But I talked to Jim Pearson at the Lyndhurst event recently, and I asked if there's any hope of that ever surfacing, and he said no. He was pretty confident that it's lost. But hey, stranger things have happened. You never know.
I I still think that there's a kinescope of that episode out there somewhere.
I
I
live in
think
hope.
I think that there's a kinescope that's going to show up eventually.
Or maybe it's just in one of those cases somewhere in in the ABC vaults or something in the
I
wrong
don't
case.
I don't think the videotape is ever going to show up, but I think the kinescope
Mhm.
will.
Now,
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about ShadowCon because that, as I said, was the first Dark Shadows convention before the Dark Shadows Festival. And I mean, Humpert Allen Estreto attended ShadowCon one time. Were
Well,
you there when Humpert went?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
All of the early Shadow Cons I went to,
Yeah. Great.
um, because Jeannie and Marcy were involved.
Hmm.
Jeannie, Marcy, and
Kathy.
Kathy were involved.
Yeah.
And I basically followed Jeannie around. You know, if Jeannie needed help, I was there.
Yeah.
Um, but the very first one in 1977, the only cast member or the only person associated with the show that was there was John
John
Carlin.
Carlin. Yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
and he and his wife and little Adam showed
Yes.
up. And while he was doing his thing with panels and autograph signings and things like that, Jeannie was babysitting Adam. So I was helping her with that,
Haha.
keeping Adam entertained.
Now, how would you say the Shadow Cons compare to the Dark Shadows festivals? Because the Shadow Cons were a smaller affair, right, in terms of
They were
the
just
attendance.
beginning.
Yeah.
ShadowCon was part of another convention,
Hmm. Yep.
and I can't remember which one it was.
Oh, I can't remember. I've had Kathy on the show, and she talked at length about it, and I can't remember now
And
what the
I
other con
just
was
looked
called.
this up the other night too,
Yeah.
and I was just looking at it.
Yeah.
um, because they were held in conjunction with this other convention. So
Yes.
they were like held within this other convention.
Yes. Yep.
Um, so you kind of got two conventions for the price of one,
Hmm.
but they were separate. I mean, ShadowCon had its own space, and the other convention had its own space too.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, they were they were more, I guess, intimate.
Hmm.
Um, but they were it was typical convention. I mean, there was a dealer's room.
Yep.
There were events like
Hmm.
the costume ball, the um, the art show.
Yep.
Um, it the format basically you go to one convention, you've been to all of them because
Right.
they're all the
Right.
same format.
And there's video. I mean, people can watch on YouTube. I mean, there are panels with like Robert Rodan and Jonathan Frid and Laura Parker, Catherine Lee Scott. More guests started
Mhm.
participating in
When
these.
they
Chris Penna.
when when
Mhm.
they were first putting ShadowCon together, they didn't know if they were going to be able to show any episodes, and
Mhm.
then all of a sudden kinescopes started showing up and things like that, so they were able to show some episodes there.
Mhm.
This was 1977. We didn't have Betamax and
Mhm.
VHS, then.
Yeah. Yep.
So watching videotapes were that was kind of difficult.
Sure. Sure.
But the 16 millimeter kinescopes, those were easy to get a 16 millimeter projector and show those.
Sure.
And when it started surfacing that people had kinescopes,
Mhm.
then they just started making arrangements with people to bring their kinescopes to the convention,
Right.
and they would show them.
And
So
people have to realize, I don't know if everyone listening to this realizes that at that time, these episodes, a lot of them had not been seen since the show went off the air originally. The show was already in syndication starting in 1975, but there were a
right,
limited number of episodes in syndication with
right.
the introduction of Barnabas' storyline and then going in 1795. But most of the rest of the series was not, certainly not 1897, which was kind of a dream to get to see 1897
Mhm.
at that time. So to see kinescopes of a storyline like that was extremely exciting.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't get to see that on TV. You'd have to go to a convention like ShadowCon to potentially see something like that.
Right. And John Carlin was a big draw too. It
Mm,
was,
sure. Yeah.
um, you know, he this was before Cagney and Lacey.
Hmm.
Um, so he was kind of in that in-between phase where he was still known as Willie Loomis,
Yeah.
but he didn't have any other really big credits.
Mhm.
Um, so people were happy to meet a Dark Shadows cast member.
Sure. And he was so
And,
lovable. Everybody loved
oh,
John
he
Carlin.
was,
Yeah.
and oh, and he was great. I remember him there. He was he was funny. I remember him laughing. He just laughed. He just loved to laugh. And he ate it up, the
Yeah.
attention. The more attention he got, the more he laughed and the more fun he was having. And um, he was right there. Whatever, whatever Jeannie and Kathy and Marcy needed, he was just like, he
Yeah.
was right there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
that's fantastic. That's
yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah.
he wasn't standoffish. He wasn't trying to hide from people.
Mhm.
He was present. He walked through the dealer's room. He sat in the dealer's room. He sat at people's tables and he 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 stopped and talked to people. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you selling and what have you got and what is this and
Sure, sure. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Now you also then got involved in subsequent official releases, for example, the Media Sound Records official music from Dark Shadows Volume 2. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, on the video version, Scott is holding up the record album, which was very exciting at the time. This was around the time I got involved in the fandom. I discovered the fandom in 86, which is when that record came out, as I recall. And I got a flyer, I remember, from the Dark Shadows. I think it was from the Dark Shadows Festival announcing that record. And I ordered that. I ordered volumes 3 and 4. I mean, how exciting that years after the original record came out in 1969, that where we got new Dark Shadows music, because Robert Cobert's
well,
music is so iconic from the show. I mean, it's so distinct and so atmospheric, and how cool to have been involved in the release of that. So, can you
mhm.
talk a little bit about that?
Well, I wasn't actually involved in the creation of the album itself.
Oh, I see.
In fact, I didn't even know it was in the works.
Oh,
Um,
but you have a
I
credit on the album, don't you?
I do, and I'll get to
Yeah.
that. I was friends with Jim Pearson for many years.
Uh-huh. And
Um,
he attended the ShadowCon. He went to Is that where you met him? Was that ShadowCon, Jim?
I met him actually before that.
Oh, okay.
Um, I met him through Jeannie.
I see.
He
Okay.
he knew Jeannie. He knew Jeannie, and I knew Jeannie, and then finally Jeannie introduced us, and then we became friends.
Hmm.
Jim and I are both the same age,
Hmm.
um, and he was still living in Texas. He had not moved to Los Angeles yet, but he would fly in for the conventions and things like that. So
Yeah.
I knew him there. So I he was involved with all kinds of things, and I didn't know that the music was actually being, that a new soundtrack was actually being done until it was practically finished. They had already selected all the music. Emil Berry had already worked with Robert Cobert to do the playlist and all of that. I got involved when it came time to design the packaging, the
I see.
cover,
Okay.
this
Yeah. With
this
the
stuff.
that iconic shot of Collinwood, the
Right.
color photo with the blue kind of dark. It's nighttime with the you see in the beginning of
This
many episodes, and then in the back. Yeah.
this picture of Josette,
Uh-huh.
of Maggie standing in front of Josette's portrait
Yep.
is how I became involved with the album
Oh, okay.
because that picture belonged to Jeannie Peacock.
Ah, I see.
She owned that picture.
I see.
Um, and Jim had seen that picture and he wanted to know if I knew who owned it and if they could use it for the back of the album. And I said, Jim, you know who owns it. Jeannie's got it. It's hers. It's like you could pick the phone up and call her yourself. So that was that. So
Uh-huh.
um, we got to talking and he showed me the early layout of what they were doing with the album cover. And it looked, the design was pretty much what you have here.
Mhm.
It was black border, picture, title, and what have you. Except what they did is they had this stark, bright daytime picture of Collinwood.
Oh,
And I took one look at it and I said, No, Jim, you can't do that. I said, It's dark shadows. I said, You need a spooky nighttime picture of the house.
good call.
I said, That picture, the daytime picture of the house, it's like, no, there's nothing creepy about it. There's nothing haunting about it. I said, Who picked that picture? It's like why?
Yes.
And he
I
stopped and he stopped and he thought about it for a moment and he was like, Yeah, you're right.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that and that Jim thought about it and agreed with
Yeah.
you because you are
So
right. Yeah.
I had just met a graphic designer, Arthur Gelb,
Mhm.
who was working on a different project that I was working on also. And I told Jim about him and I said, he would probably um, and also the lettering, the title lettering
Yep.
didn't look anything like Dark Shadows.
Oh,
They just did some basic typesetting and it was boring. It didn't look anything like the show. And I said, Jim, I said, you need at least the Dark Shadows title to look like Dark Shadows.
right. Sure.
And so, he took all that to heart and he agreed. It was like, yeah, you're right. We need to change all that. And I said, do you want me to put you in touch with Arthur? And he said yes. So I connected the two of them, and then Arthur ended up doing the cover design. So then the next step was the back. I said, what are you doing with the back cover? And he said, well, we're going to put some pictures on there. And I said, well, which pictures are you going to put on? Well, they only had like 50 pictures to choose from. And I said, well, which ones are you going to put on? And he kind of shrugged and it was like, I don't know. I said, well, let's sit down and look through your 50 pictures and figure out which ones are the ones that are most representative to the music that you've already chosen. So we looked at the track list and then we started picking pictures that represented the titles and the music that was in the track list.
Great. Great.
And then I said, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for, because this is a 20th anniversary commemorative, basically. This was for the 20th anniversary of the show.
Mhm.
I said, what are you doing? I mean, what are you doing to make this unique? And he didn't really have any idea what they were doing with the back of it. So wait, this section here, this is the statement. This is Bob Cobert's uh, statement.
Yes. Yep.
I said, what you need to do is you need to have them signed by Bob Cobert.
Yeah, that's a
You
good
need you
idea.
need to have at least the first run signed by Bob Cobert. And he said, that's a great idea. So then we went to Bob Cobert and said, are you going to write the liner notes? And Bob was like, "Oh, I don't know what to write. And you guys write it and just make it sound like me." So I wrote this.
So Bob didn't write that?
No, I wrote this.
Oh,
And I had them leave the space here so that he could sign it.
I see. Okay.
So this was the space for him to sign his name.
Haha.
So that was the whole design here for Bob to be able to sign the albums. Now,
Okay.
in the second run of the album, the signature was burned in
Hmm.
automatically. So
Okay.
it was just there.
Hmm.
It wasn't for him to sign because this debuted at one of the festivals.
Hmm.
So he was there and he was signing them. So they had the albums there for people to buy and sign right there at the festival.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So for everything that I did on this, Jim just automatically, without even asking me, gave me a creative consultant credit on it.
Oh, that's cool. That's good.
So
Yeah.
that
Interesting.
so that is how I ended up being part of that. But it was during this experience that Return to Mayberry aired on TV.
And I remember when that aired, I watched that when that aired, and that was the
Hmm.
era of the reunion movies on
Of the
TV.
reunion shows.
Yes.
And the first one that kicked it off was Rescue from Gilligan's Island, which was
Yes.
1978.
Yep.
That
I
was
remember that
many
one
years,
too.
that was many years before.
Yep.
But then after that came the Brady Brides
Yep. Yep. I remember that too. Yep.
and then the Brady Christmas, which came
Mm.
just that same year, that um, the year that the album came out. And then there was Return of Perry Mason. There was
They did an I
oh
Dream of Jeannie one too, but I think that
oh
maybe
yeah,
that was late.
I Dream of Jeannie 15 years later was
Yeah.
1985.
Yeah.
Um, the Green Acres one didn't come until 1990, so that
Hmm.
was later.
Hmm.
Um, but they were, and then it had already been announced that Star Trek: The Next Generation was coming in 1987.
Hmm.
So they were popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
Some of them were just reunion TV movies. Oh, Eight is Enough was also doing one.
Yep.
The Waltons had been doing them all along. There was The Walton Girls Get Married. There was Easter on Walton's Mountain. It was, I don't know how
They
many
did Wild
Waltons.
Wild West too. I remember.
I can't remember
I
when
remember
that
Wild
was.
Wild West did
There was
too.
Wild Wild
There were so
West,
many. They just would do these reunion shows on TV. Yeah.
and they were really popular. There
Yes.
was also Get Smart.
Yes. Yep.
Um,
Yep. I remember
yeah.
watching that. Yeah.
So in our
The Munsters Revenge.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. So in our discussions, Return to Mayberry is the one that had just aired. And I asked Jim, I said, why isn't Dan doing one? Why isn't why isn't Dark Shadows? Why aren't we seeing a Dark Shadows reunion TV movie? It's like they're popping up everywhere, they're popular, they're making money,
Sure.
they're getting audience shares, they're easy to do. There's a whole bunch of the cast still alive, still around, and most of them aren't doing anything. What's going on here? And he basically explained to me that, Dan didn't want to revisit Dark Shadows
Mhm.
for whatever reason. It's Dan had his reasons.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what if another producer came in, got permission from Dan Curtis to do it with Curtis's input, with Curtis's involvement, but someone else running the show, you know, not cutting Curtis out completely, but not putting the burden of doing the show on Curtis's shoulders. And Jim kind of shrugged and said, I don't know if he'd go for that or not. By then Jim was working with Dan Curtis. Um, and I said, do you think it's worth a try? Do you think it's worth giving it a shot? And he thought about it and he said, I don't see why not. And I said, well, let's do it. So that's how Return to Collinwood, or I mean, that's how the proposal that was in the Dark Shadows files came about.
Now, just to clarify for people, this return to Collinwood is not the same return to Collinwood as the stage performance and then audio play that came out years later that was written by Jameson
No.
Selby. This is a completely distinct. There have been many different Dark Shadows pitches for a variety of different things, including a Broadway musical, and a primetime HBO animated series, which I would love to see the designs for that if they exist. Jim, if you're listening, I'd love to see those if they exist. And many others as well over the years. And Return to Collinwood is one of them, as is Darker Shadows, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. I have the
Right.
book right here. But first, a little bit about Return to Collinwood. So you put this
Okay,
pitch
but
together.
now hold on.
Yeah,
Return to
yeah.
Collinwood came secondary later. So
Oh,
hold
so
on.
there was a previous. So return. There
So
were three
let
pitches.
there were three, yes. So
Oh,
hold on.
wow.
So what evolved from that conversation was what was published in the DS files.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so the focus of that was to try to get the rights from Dan Curtis to do a TV movie. That was it, TV movie.
Yep.
And to secure the permissions and the rights to do it either with his involvement or without his involvement.
Yep.
He always would have had the option of being involved or not being involved.
Hmm.
But the goal was to secure the permissions to do it. So that's the proposal that ended up in the Dark Shadows files.
Gotcha. Okay.
So at that point, there was no storyline. There was no, there was no, there were ideas. I mean, there was one idea of possibly doing a flashback like 1795, but going back to Prohibition era, the
Yep.
1920s, or the Depression era, something like that. But it was just an idea. There was nothing on paper. The whole focus was to try to get Dan Curtis to say, that's a great idea. Go ahead and develop something. So I told Jim, I said, if we're going to do this, we need the support of the original cast and we need the original crew. And I said, for that, I'm going to need your contacts list
Hmm.
because I'm going to need to contact all these people and I'm going to need to get letters of support from all these people. And he said, whatever you need. So he opened up his address book for me. And starting in June of 86, I started making phone calls to literally everybody,
Yeah.
including Alexandra Isles and Jonathan Frid and Joan Bennett and Catherine Lee Scott and Laura Parker and everybody else. And Bob Costello and Ron Sprout and Violet Wells and Sam Hall and
Joe Caldwell.
Joe
Uh,
Caldwell and
yeah.
and Clarice Blackburn and
Yeah. I think
Dennis Patrick and
didn't you have initially, didn't David Hennessy, wasn't he going to be part of it and then that didn't
no,
come to fruition, or was
no.
he just you never got
I
a hold of him, or
no, because I talked with Jim uh, at length about various people, and we never contacted David Hennessy because he was in South America,
oh right, yeah. And David Selby was doing Falcon
and David
Crest.
Selby was on Falcon Crest. We never contacted him.
Kate
We all
Jackson too, probably not, I would imagine.
actually we did try to contact Kate
Oh,
Jackson, but we
okay.
could never get a hold of her.
I see. Okay. Mm,
She didn't want to talk to us at all.
mm.
And Jim said, you can go ahead and try contacting Alexandra Isles, but she probably won't talk to you. And she actually talked to me and she actually sent me a letter.
That's great.
So,
Yeah, cool.
so, so starting in July, I started collecting these letters from these people. And over the course of the next few months, I started assembling this folder of all the support of cast and crew from the original series. But I didn't do any work on assembling a proposal of any kind. Almost a year went by, and it was coming into spring and summer of 1987, and Jim said to me that I should attend the New Jersey festival in 1987, the one in August of 1987. And I hadn't been to a festival in quite a while at that point. And I was like, sure, let's go. So I booked my flight. I went to the festival, and of course, the first person I run into is Diana Malay.
Uh-huh.
I had been friends with her now at this point for quite a long time. And so I started following her around the festival for lack of better to do. He squeezed me in between two things on Saturday night, so I'd have like the main stage for about an hour and be able to talk to the audience, take questions, tell them what we're doing, and get feedback. Basically, we were trying to gauge what we were doing and how the audience and how the people were reacting to it. And overall, it went over really well. That's where I met
Ed Gross. Yep.
Ed Gross. And that Saturday night of that festival, after I was done with my presentation to the festival goers, we ended up in my hotel room ordering pizza from a local pizza place. And we spent the rest of that night into the morning drafting the first draft of the proposal that ended up being the proposal that was in the DS files.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So Ed
Uh,
helped you draft that?
Ed was very instrumental in
I see.
helping draft the structure of how we put that proposal together.
I see.
That was our first draft. Now that went through some evolution after I got back to Los Angeles. Jim and I worked on it some more in September and October.
No, you were already working in the industry as a producer at this point in Los
Not as a
Angeles.
producer, I was working as an executive.
As an executive, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
But yeah, I'd been working for the studio since 1982. So,
Gotcha. Mhm.
um, and in 87, I was working at Lorimar. So
Gotcha.
funny, Selby was working on Falcon Crest, which was a Lorimar show, and I was
Uh-huh.
working at Lorimar.
Oh, wow.
So I saw him frequently, but
Oh,
never talked to him about Dark
oh.
Shadows.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, September and October, we polished up the proposal, and then I turned it over to Jim in November, and he turned it over to Dan Curtis in December.
Okay.
So that was the progression of that proposal.
And that included letters in support
That
of
included all of the letters,
from the cast and crew. Yeah.
right? So the proposal, the exact proposal that was in the DS files is exactly what we
Yeah.
submitted to Curtis.
And for people who don't know, this was a sequel to the original Dark Shadows that would have been set years later and at that time in the 80s. Uh,
Our goal was to not retell the Barnabas story. Our
yep,
goal was to jump ahead 15 years from the original series and pick up there
yep,
and have original characters plus new characters.
yes, yep. Mhm.
Um, and have Ron and Violet and Joe specifically Sam was working on a soap opera in New York,
Mm.
so I don't know that we would have gotten him um, to be part of it, but specifically Ron, Violet, and Joe
Yeah.
to craft a script, a 2 hour movie script, TV movie script.
Now, would this have led to potentially a series? Was that the idea, or was it just a one and done?
Well,
Re
I would have wanted it to be a backdoor pilot.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I would have wanted it to be a 2 hour TV movie with the potential of, hey, this might go to series.
Yeah. But
But if it didn't, we still had the TV movie.
yep. And but Dan Curtis nixed it, right?
Right. Over the holidays, Dan looked at it, and in January, we got the word that he didn't want anything to do with Dark Shadows, and so he complimented the effort and was surprised to see the support from all of the people that we had attached to it, and was complimentary of the effort, but overall just said, you know, get out of here,
Yeah. And this was
basically.
there was a period of time where Dan Curtis he really wanted to establish himself with something else besides Dark Shadows and horror in general. He kind of stepped away from the horror genre.
Exactly.
And he wanted to do subsequently, did Winds of War and War and Remembrance, and I think he was satisfied with that. And then he returned
Hmm.
to Dark Shadows and other cool, spooky things that he wanted
Right.
to, because he himself was a fan of that stuff, but I think he just said, I can't creak another door, as Mark DeWitziak told me when he was on the podcast. I think Dan just kind of got burned out on that. And I think he felt tired of being pigeonholed in that. So he
Mhm.
wanted to establish himself
Well,
as being able to do something else, and then came back to it later with the 91 series.
he didn't give us any explanations. He just,
Yeah.
he was just, he thanked us, he complimented us on the effort, and
Mhm.
that was it.
Yeah.
So that was January of 88.
Yeah. Okay.
Or wait, yeah, January of 88.
S-
So not to, I was not going to take no for an answer.
mhm.
So I let it sit for a month, and then I decided at that point, the Brady's had just premiered.
Mhm.
So that was the culmination of all of the Brady Bunch TV movies that now became a 1 hour Brady TV series that had just launched.
Yep. I remember that too. It was the more dramatic version of the Brady Bunch, as I recall. It
It
was,
was
yeah.
what they called a dramedy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that had just premiered. And then we knew and Star Trek The Next Generation had premiered just the previous August.
Hmm.
In fact, it premiered while I was in New Jersey at the festival. So I thought, all right, we're going to take a different approach here. We're going to come back at Dan Curtis and we're going to propose a full-blown series instead of a 2 hour TV movie. And I thought, all right, we need what's called in the industry a Bible. So what that entails is a full season outline story. So that means a full projection of what we're going to do for the whole season, how the characters are going to relate to each other, who the characters are, what their interactions are going to be, who the new characters are going to be, things like that. It's a lot of work.
Sure.
It's a lot of writing
Yeah.
and all of that. So I got on the phone and I called a longtime friend of mine, Lisa Morton. Um, Lisa right now, Lisa is a very popular horror author. She's a screenwriter. She's the world's foremost expert on Halloween.
Okay.
She's a former president of the Horror Writers Association.
Hmm.
she wasn't any of these things back in 1988.
Okay.
She was a struggling TV and film writer like I was, um, writing pilots and stuff like that. But she was a Dark Shadows fan like I was. I called her and I said, "Here's what I'm trying to do." I said, "You know how to write you know how to write a Bible. Will you help me put this thing together?" And she said, "Sure." So for nearly 2 months, we hammered out the Return to Collinwood.
Okay. So that's when that became the official title of it at that point.
So that's why her name was not in the proposal that was in the Dark Shadows files,
Gotcha.
because she had not joined the project at that point.
I see.
Yeah. So when we were done, we had this 50-page projection covering 22 episodes
Mhm.
of a first season story outline of what's going to happen, starting with the season premiere to the cliffhanger, and how these characters are going to revolve around each other and how they're going to interact, and how we're going to bring from 1971 to 1989, basically, how we're going to bring the show forward, how we're going to introduce these new characters and how they're going to interact with the old characters. We made a lot of decisions. I was on the phone with Jim Pearson a lot. I was like, "Jim, can we get away with this? This isn't really canon. Can we get away with this? It's minor. Are the fans going to like lynch us if we do this?" There were some things that we kind of stretched.
Okay. Can you give an
There are,
example of that?
well, we threw out parallel time completely.
Okay.
We picked up, we basically picked up where 1971 ended before parallel time started.
Oh, so you basically skipped the last year of the show, like the 1840 stuff with the head of Judah
Mhm.
Zachary and all of that didn't,
All of that, yeah.
you
We
didn't
we
acknowledge any of that. Okay.
yeah, we threw all of that out.
Why that?
So
Why did you make that choice?
because it was too complicated.
I see. Okay.
So we still had Carolyn married to Jeb,
Okay.
and Jeb was dead.
Yeah.
So we had Carolyn kind of like a recluse,
Yeah.
um, haunting the halls of Collinwood,
Yeah.
speaking to Jeb's spirit,
Right.
and never having gotten over his death,
Hmm.
things like that. We had David having left Collinwood, and um, Elizabeth's passing, the catalyst for him coming home, and things
And
like that.
Barnabas was a
Now,
reverted to being a vampire again, right?
now that was the kicker here. We couldn't get Frid to give us a letter.
I see.
I talked to him on the phone 5 or 6 times. He liked the idea, but he didn't want to commit a letter to us.
Hmm.
Even though the letter would only have said, "I like your idea. I'm interested. If we can work out a contract, if my schedule allows," and things like that. No commitment, no contractual deal, just saying, "Hey, I'm interested."
Hmm.
But he wouldn't give us one. So we didn't even introduce Barnabas until mid-season.
Okay.
So he's not there at the beginning of the season. And then what we did is we explained that he and Julia are off searching the world for a cure to his vampirism.
Okay.
So they're in the Middle East, and they're in the Orient, and they're in these places of mysticism, looking for possible cures, spells, things that can possibly cure his vampirism. When he returns, he's aged. And immediately Willie is like, "You're cured," because he's aged. And it's like, then he tells his story that they found a possible cure, but it wasn't complete. It
Mm,
was like a ta stone tablet that had partially deteriorated.
I see.
And
Yep.
Julia tried to extrapolate it, and in doing so, caused caused an error, basically, that backfired,
Yep.
killed Julia. So that explains why she's not there, and caused him to start aging, but he's still a vampire.
So it was like a mystical cure attempt at to remove the curse to cure him, but it
Right.
only partially succeeded. So he started to age, but he still stayed a vampire.
But
Yeah.
he's a vampire, so
Yeah.
that explains why he looks older, but he's still a vampire.
Yeah.
So then that was our writer's device for Frid still playing Barnabas
Sure.
Collins.
And Quentin, since David Selby was in Falcon Crest at that time, Quentin wasn't in it. But when we jump ahead to Darker Shadows, Quentin is now, David Selby is now available. So Quentin is back in the picture. So you, so
But
that,
but
yeah,
but now hang on a second.
sure. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, that return to Collinwood is the proposal for the series
Yep.
that we came up with. We polished that up, then we sent it to Ron and Violet. And we sent it to Joe too, but Joe just basically kind of gave us thumbs ups.
Okay.
He didn't really give us much of substance on it,
Mhm.
so he didn't contribute much. But Ron and Violet really contributed some good material. So they actually did have a participatory role in it.
Yep.
We polished the whole thing up, and that winter of um, of '88, we hit Curtis again with the full-blown series idea and presented Return of Collinwood to him again, and he shot us down again. So that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Now, the book that you have, that
Darker Shadows, which was available on Amazon. I don't know if it is
it's
anymore.
not any, I took it down.
I see. Okay.
That is the text for Return to Collinwood. That is not Darker Shadows.
Oh,
I just retitled it.
I see. Okay.
So the 1988 series proposal idea for Return to Collinwood is that book that you have in your hand.
Okay.
Um, that proposal to Dan Curtis that he shot down a second time. What was very frustrating about that, so Quentin is not in that again because he was still on Falcon Crest in that time period.
Right.
Falcon Crest was still on the air. But if you read that, you have read that, right?
I have. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you see
But
that
I but
Barnabas
I
doesn't
seem
show up
to
until episode 13.
yeah, but I seem to
Yeah,
remember Quentin being part of, maybe it was something else that maybe it was in Richard. Well, I can't talk about that. Maybe it might have been something else
it
because I remember
right.
seeing that Quentin was part of Darker Shadows, so I'm confusing it with what I read in here. Okay. Yep.
So then at that point, return to Collinwood and the original proposal and all the materials and all the letters and all of that all got put into a file cabinet, and that was the end of that. That was early 1989. I was done with Dark Shadows. And then 1991 rolls around, I mean, barely 2 years later, and here comes the revival series.
Yep.
And Curtis goes back to the Barnabas story,
Yep.
which I totally disagreed with.
That's
I
what Dan wanted to do, is always go back, and he did it with House of Dark Shadows. He did it with 91
uh,
series, even the 2004
and the
pilot, which is
2004 pilot,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And I don't, I never understood the need to keep retelling that same story over and over.
Mm. I
So,
love House of Dark Shadows, and I like the 91 series too, don't get me wrong. But the one thing they've never done is a sequel series, and that's something that I think everyone would kind of like to see because we've not seen that yet. I mean, we've seen
Hmm.
licensed media versions of that, but we have not seen it in like television or film format. And it's funny, Darker Shadows, the title. That's what I call House of Dark Shadows, Darker Shadows sometimes because it is Darker
Hmm.
Shadows.
Oh,
But yeah,
I love House of Dark
oh, it's
Shadows. It's
great.
one of
Yeah,
my favorite movies.
same here. Yeah,
So
but
then, so
mhm,
then it sits in a file cabinet, which is why nobody knows about it. Nobody knows anything about it because I never talked about it. It just was in a file cabinet all these years. The copies that were out there, I mean, I know Jim has a copy of it. Diana Malay had a copy of it.
mhm.
Um, Ron and Violet both had copies of it, but
Didn't Diana have an issue with David being an alcoholic or something in it? I seem to recall something about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but she was okay with it because he redeemed himself.
Okay. Gotcha.
He redeemed himself through the story.
Hmm.
Um, that was a knee-jerk reaction at the beginning. You know, when we first meet him, he's in his cups
Yeah.
and he's down on his luck, but he turns his life around later in the story. She That was her initial reaction, and when she got to that point where
Hmm.
he gets his life together later, then she retracted that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
anyway, jump ahead to 2014. I had some development money from an investor
Uh-huh.
to put into a project, my choice, whatever project I wanted to. And I was about to lose it because it had a time frame on it. And I didn't know what project to put it into. So I'm going through all my file cabinet stuff, all my dead projects, and I pulled out Return to Collinwood and I thought, hmm, here's an interesting idea. So I dusted off, and I've got this writer I want to work with, Lori Bowen. And I thought this would be a good way to work with her to see how we work as collaborators and also revamp the Dark Shadows proposal and modernize it and get a new, get a new project out of it. So we literally tore apart Return to Collinwood and started from page one and rewrote the whole thing, this time with Quentin in it, because Falconcrest was gone at this point, and did a whole new series proposal. We used a lot of the material from Return to Collinwood, but we revamped the whole thing and restructured it. And we wrote an actual pilot. We actually wrote the script for the series premiere this time
Yep.
out of it. But then when we were done with it, we were like, what are we going to do with it? The 2012 movie had pretty much killed Dark Shadows. No one wanted to talk about it. I had been out of Los Angeles now at this point for about 20 years. Um, I didn't live there anymore. I didn't have my contacts. I didn't have my I basically, I was doing my own thing, and
Hmm.
I Dark Shadows was not part of my own thing anymore.
Hmm.
Um, I just had no idea what to do with it. I kicked it around for a while. I talked to a couple of agent friends of mine, and we were all of the same belief at this point. Dan Curtis had passed away. I didn't know how to get a hold of the Curtis sisters. We were kind of at a dead end with it.
Hmm.
So again, it didn't go anywhere. But that was when the title Darker Shadows came out.
I see.
So because I wanted something new, I wanted something that was of that time period. I wanted something that showed us that it was Dark Shadows, but it was something new.
Right.
It was something, it was something bigger. It was something newer.
Yeah.
So that's where Darker Shadows came from. But then after after I gave up on that and filed it away again, I decided to take the Return to Collinwood proposal and release it. I used the Darker Shadows title
I
for
see.
that.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
So I pulled it from the third proposal and put it over here on this book.
Yeah.
So that's where the confusion comes from.
Gotcha. Are you going to make
The
that third proposal available at some point?
I don't know because jump ahead now to 2025, 2024 and 2025,
Yeah.
I've now discovered on the Dark Shadows forums that there was discussion of the book, Darker
Mhm.
Shadows, that I couldn't respond to because I couldn't register for the
Yeah.
forums.
And in fact, we were just talking earlier. I posted your interview with Ed Gross and the files in the Dark
I
Shadows
know,
forums in
I
that
know.
thread. Yeah.
Well, I finally got registered, and my first post was how unusual it was to me to discover that something I worked on so long ago had been the topic of discussion among people, and I didn't know about it.
Right. Right. And our mutual friend Rich Hanley had also reached out to you to discuss, and I'm not going to say the reasons why, but he did reach out to you to discuss your proposals as well, because he was very interested in learning more about that. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
there was that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
always fascinating to hear about these things that because we've heard rumors or in some of the books, the Dark Shadows, the Pomegranate Press books, Jim Pearson mentioned some of the pitches and proposals that have made, we know of some of them, but then we don't get the full picture of it. So it's fascinating to hear kind of behind the scenes and what went on there and what was planned and what potentially could have happened.
Well, to answer your question about making the 2015 effort available, I mean, right now I'm going to say no because I'm talking with Darren Gross about, he brought up the possibility of Big Finish.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
With my involvement in audio dramas um, since 2020, he that topic came up in
It's
discussion.
this big fin now I just did an episode talking about the licensing for Dark Shadows and um I didn't mention Big Finish because I wasn't sure if Big Finish still had the license for Dark Shadows because it's been quite a long time since they've released anything. And I've thought about reaching out to Joseph Litster, maybe bringing him on because there was talk about a Windcliff series that they were going to do, and then
Hmm.
kind of everything during COVID. And I know we've lost some key cast members, obviously, like Laura Parker recently. We've lost John Carlin, etc. So I don't know if that's why, or if they still have the license, or do you know?
According to Darren, according to what he told me, they still have the
Oh,
license,
okay. Good to
but
know.
they're letting it sit idle at the moment for whatever reason, for
Interesting.
whatever unknown reason.
Okay.
So the discussion is in its very infancy at the moment. Darren and I are trying to schedule a meeting online where we can sit and talk and have this multi-topic
Mhm.
discussion to figure out what we're
Okay.
going to do with some of the stuff.
Gotcha. What were some, besides Quentin being in it, what were other key differences between Darker Shadows and Return to Collinwood? Is that like the,
Oh,
the main one, or were there other things?
well, the key one was um, well, we expanded on David's family.
Okay.
So David left Collinwood at an early age. And so when we meet him in the story, in the pilot. He's married and he has three children.
Mhm.
So he has twin daughters who are college age and who have this twin the twin psychic ability.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he has a middle schooler son.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, the catalyst for bringing him home is Roger's death.
Okay.
So we don't actually meet Roger. Um, we have Maggie going to Quentin and letting Quentin know that Roger passed away in his sleep the night
Mhm.
before.
Okay.
Um, we have Quentin living in the old house, and in the basement of the old house, he's got Barnabas locked in a box
Okay.
or
Yeah.
locked in a coffin.
Yeah.
Barnabas has been there for years.
Yeah.
And Dr. Melissa Stokes, who is a carryover from
Yeah.
Return to Collinwood, has been keeping Barnabas alive through blood bags, feeding him through tubes,
Mhm.
um, so that he doesn't expire. But basically, Barnabas has gone insane. So the reason he's keeping Barnabas trapped in this box or locked in this box is because several years ago, Barnabas killed Julia.
Oh, wow.
In a fit of rage. Julia did something that set Barnabas off on this spree,
Mhm.
and Quentin finally trapped him
Yeah.
and locked him in this box and has kept him there ever since. Julia's murder has never been solved. Um, in 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 that incident, Quentin's portrait got damaged,
Ah, okay.
which explains David Selby's
Well, he started
age.
aging. Yeah. Is he a
So
werewolf again too, or
no,
no?
no,
Okay.
we don't have him being a werewolf,
Okay.
but we have the portrait having been damaged, which explains Selby being his current age.
Uh-huh.
So Quentin has aged
Yeah.
and is aging. So we took that Barnabas aging thing and
Applied it. Yeah.
transposed it over to. So the idea would be that Barnabas would be cast as a new actor,
Yeah. Recasting. Yeah. And
right?
Angelique was, I assume, would have been in there too.
Angelique, we have we had an interesting idea for Angelique, but then Laura Parker passed away.
Yeah.
We were going to have Angelique played by two different
Hmm.
actors.
Hmm.
We were going to have old Angelique, who was this old, haggard, um, well, basically this old hag. We were
Uh,
going to age Laura Parker out and make her look
sure.
like this old, decrepit.
Like they did in the show when
Yeah,
Sandra.
exactly.
Yeah.
But then when we see her as this young, vibrant woman, we were going to go to her daughter, Caitlin Hawkins, and
Oh, yeah.
play, have her be the young Angelique.
I see. Is Caitlin an actress?
Yes,
Oh,
she's
okay.
she's been doing some acting.
Great. Yeah.
Um, so that was our
Interesting.
idea there.
Interesting.
Um, so that was that. So our Vicky Winters ingenue was going to be one of the daughters of David,
Okay.
and we had the whole thing come to the end of the pilot where the original series starts out with "My name is Victoria Winters, my journey is beginning," blah blah blah. We had the pilot end with a voiceover of Savannah's character talking about. I posted it on the forum. You can see the monologue there,
Hmm.
and it ends with, "My name is Savannah Collins, and my journey is just beginning."
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
that's how the pilot ended.
So you didn't get to pitch this to Dan Curtis Holdings. Did Jim get to look at it or?
No, Jim never even
Okay.
saw it.
Okay. But there's potential. Maybe you could do something with maybe with Big Finish. Now, later, you would then went and did your own audio
Mm.
dramas. uh, The Secrets of Harridge House, and I caught the reference, was like, oh, it must be a reference to Daphne Harridge, I assume from Dark Shadows. That's that. When I saw that, I said, oh, I bet that's a little nod there. I don't know,
Harrod
is it? I don't know.
Harridge is the only connection to Dark Shadows,
Okay,
and it was just because I like the name Harridge.
okay,
It doesn't have anything to do with a character named Harridge or anything like that.
right. Just a nod, just a little nod.
It's just a nod to the
Yeah,
show.
yeah,
The family is the Harridge family, but they're not the Harridge family from Dark Shadows.
right.
So what happened was COVID-19 happened. Well, actually, what happened right before COVID-19, I had written a screenplay with a friend,
Mhm.
and in April of 2020, we did a Zoom virtual table read. So we had 40 people on Zoom
Wow.
doing the table read for the screenplay. So we had all of them playing different characters. We had a ball. The reason we did it is because all of my actor friends, all of my stage people, my theater people were climbing the walls because in March of 2020, the quarantines and the lockdowns were just starting.
Sure.
Everybody was climbing the walls. And all of my actor friends were driving their spouses and significant others and their pets crazy because they were home.
Yeah.
They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't go on stage. They couldn't do stuff. They couldn't go to the studios. They couldn't practice their crafts. And they were all crying to me. It's like, I can't do anything. So I decided we just finished the script. It wasn't even polished yet. But I thought this would be an opportunity to hear it, to listen to it,
Mhm.
and get notes for polishing it and cleaning it up and all of that. So we did this table read and we had a ball.
Great.
It took us 4 hours to get through the whole thing. And it just, we had so much fun. The next day, I started getting um, emails from some of the people about one actor in particular and the character he played and how entertaining he was and how much fun they had listening to him and his spin on that character and all of that. So I couldn't help but call him and read all these notes to him and stroke his ego basically. So he's a friend of mine in Northern Nevada. He's the program manager at a radio station up there.
Okay.
And he's also a theater person. He's a theater actor up there too.
Mhm.
So I call him and we're talking and I'm reading him all this stuff and he's having a ball and laughing and he thought the whole thing was fun. And we're talking about radio and out of the blue he said, "Have you ever written anything like the old time radio dramas?" And I'm like, "No, not really. I've listened to some of them, but yeah, I've never written anything like that." And he was like, he's talking as the program manager of the radio station. He's like, I'd sure love to see old time radio dramas come back. And so we're talking and talking, and I'm like typing away while we're talking. And a few minutes later, I had 6 pages of basically a proposal for a radio drama.
Cool.
And I saved it and I emailed it to him and I said, "Hey Joe, check your email. Read it while we're connected here and tell me if that this is what you had in mind." It was called Skeletons in the Closet, and it was about a spooky old house and three siblings who inherit the house and the goings on and the people that are inhabiting the house that they inherit and all of this. And so he reads it and he just goes bonkers and he's like, "Oh my God, this is great. I love this." And it's like I want to do this. And I'm like, well, I wrote it for you. So, if you can
Yeah.
get it going, take it. It's yours. You know, go, go with it.
Yeah.
So we ended the call. This was the end of April, and I didn't hear anything from him. And I didn't hear anything from him. And I didn't hear anything from him. And then on the 30th of July, my phone rings and it's him. And he's like, he says he wants to present it to the board of Proscenium Players, which is a local theater company, on August 10th. So 10 days from when we're talking, to get their support and then get the show going for the radio station. He wants the radio station to air the show. And I'm like, so what do you need me to do? It's like, why are you calling me? It's like, I gave it to you. What are you calling me for? So he wanted to know if I could prepare like a little skit that they could perform at the board meeting. That, like three actors could perform at the board meeting that had the flavor of what the show would be about. I said, sure, no problem. So the next day I sent him this little 4-page thing that three actors could play right there at the board meeting and
Mhm.
basically give them the flavor of what the show is about. So instead of performing it at the board meeting, he decides to record it and turn it into like a teaser trailer.
Okay.
So then he adds music and sound effects and the voices and all of that. And then he plays it at the board meeting on the 10th. And the board votes unanimously to support the project and help in any way they can. That includes giving us one of their board members as executive producer of the show. And I'm like, okay. So then a day later, I get a phone call and he says, the radio station wants to premiere it on Halloween. And I'm like, this is August 12th. And you want to premiere the show on October 31st. I don't have writers. I don't have scripts. We don't have actors. It's like, are you kidding me? So I'm like, okay, okay, okay. I'll call you back in like 2 days. So I get on the phone and I call a writer friend of mine and I say, look, you want to help me with this? And he's like, sure. So we both decide that if we're going to do this, we want to do something horror, first of all. We're both Dark Shadows fans. So we want to do something that pays homage to Dark Shadows. And that's where the show started to take off.
Okay.
So now we have two writers, me and him, and we started kicking around. Okay, we're going to do 13 episodes for the first season. We talk about the format, we start talking about the characters, how it's all going to start, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then I get with the other producer, I get with the executive producer, and I say, when are you doing auditions? And he said, script, we need script material, we need script pages for auditions on August 20th. So we're like,
Wow. Yeah.
like, like 6 more days.
Jeez. Yikes.
And I'm just like, oh my God. So for the next few days, all I did was write the pilot,
Yeah.
the first episode.
Yeah.
And I said, all right. And then worked with my other writer, my co-writer, to outline some of what we were going to do for the season and other characters we were going to bring in so that we could cast those characters, even though
Yeah.
we didn't have scripted pages for them. So auditions came around. We knew who we were casting, at least the main ones. And by September 1st, we had the entire cast. And by September 10th, we were recording.
Great. So
Yes.
you pulled it off in time.
Oh, we pulled it off. We premiered on October 31st.
Fantastic.
And on October 31st, when we aired episodes 1 and 2, which comprised the pilot, um, when we aired episodes 1 and 2, we were already recording episodes 7 and 8.
Great. Wow. Awesome.
I
Fantastic.
I I had
Groovy.
I
I
had
didn't
a
say you had it all.
I had a pool of writers
Yeah.
that were working with us. Now, Jeannie Graham, come full circle, Jeannie Graham joined the show in the second season.
Oh, great. Ha.
And she became one of my best writers on the show in the second and third
Fantastic.
season. Um, so what we ended up doing, because John and I were such huge Dark Shadows fans, is we started throwing Easter eggs into the show.
Ha ha.
So in the first episode, for instance, we have flight 1966
Okay. Yeah.
arriving in Reno. So
Haha.
1966 being the year that Dark Shadows premiered.
Right.
In a little later in that same episode, we have another flight arriving with another character on it. Flight 627, June 27th.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
We have Trask Street.
Haha. Great. I love those little Easter eggs like that. That's great.
All sorts of little Dark Shadows Easter eggs
Sure.
throughout all 3 seasons of the show.
Haha. Perfect.
So
Now,
what we didn't know is that in New York City, there is a place called Harridge House.
oh, okay.
So the first time that we hashtagged Harridge House, we got a message from Harridge House
Oh,
going, "Who are you?"
oh gosh.
And they didn't mind because it was basically free advertising for them.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, people can listen to this right on the podcast apps, if I'm not mistaken. I did pull it up on Apple Podcasts, and I saw there were episodes on there.
Yes.
So it's available on the
It's
Spotify and all of those podcast
any
apps.
anywhere podcasts are heard. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio,
Great.
basically any of them.
So, folks, you can listen to this. It's free on any same way you listen to Tara Collinwood. Well, if you listen on YouTube, that's a different animal. But if you listen on the podcast apps, you can listen to The Secrets of Harridge House and subscribe to it. I will put a link in the show notes, of course, to the Secrets of Harridge House. I will also put a link to the Dark Shadows forums because I've been a member there for a very long time, and Mysterious Benefactor, Midnight, and Dom do a fantastic job moderating and running that forum. And Scott has been posting there lately and sharing some information about Darker Shadows and Return to Collinwood. So you can check out his posts over there. And Scott, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down with me and share this, because we don't hear much about these pitches that we hear about them, but then we don't get like a peek behind the scenes about how it went and what it entailed. So you've been kind enough to share some of that with us today. So thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a delight being on your show.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you again. And folks, please be sure to check out The Secrets of Harridge House. Be sure to check out the Dark Shadows forums. With that said, take care.
And for as long as they lived, the dark shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful production.